Hello and welcome to the Baji Rao IAS Academy. Today is 14th of September and we are going to discuss the daily Hindu newspaper analysis. Before the starting of the discussion, if you are liking our channel, please do subscribe, share and promote into your friend circle so that more and more students gets benefited from this discussion. So, shift our focus to the first and very important news about floods in Libya. When we talk about Libya, Libya is an African country lying along the coast of Mediterranean Sea. We will discuss the map of Libya as well, but there is very sad news about it. Like more than 5,000 people died in this flood. And why this flood occurred despite Libya is mostly desert, it is because of the rain burst, sudden coming of rainfall because of this the river which is known as Darna river, and the Darna city is also located here. This caused massive flooding. So when we talk about the flash flood, it is basically intense amount of rainfall in a short interval of time. And in fact, in India, we also see flash flood that occurs in the Himachal, that occurs in the Uttarakhand. So flash flood is like that situation which brings devastation because the early warning system didn't respond so correctly and so fastly. So this is the problem of flash flood. So we will discuss first of all the location of Libya, but you can see more than 5,000 people has been died and more information about the death will come as well. So you can see the image here, how much devastation the Libya flood caused. In fact, many of the infrastructure lost. In fact, one of the person in an interview told that everywhere the dead body of men, women, children was lying here and there. So much sad news about this crisis. So if you talk about map of Libya, you can see Libya is an African country and it is located along the coast of Mediterranean Sea. And when we talk about the city where the flash flood caused devastation, it is located here. That is the city of Darna. It is located on the river Darna. And because of the flash flood, this river overcrossed its capacity. And because of that, the massive flood occurred. And when we say about flood, you should understand when the flood plains gets over crossed by the water of the river because of the heavy rainfall, then this situation is known as flood. And if we talk about Libya in greater detail, you can discuss here the map. And the bordering countries is basically the Tunisia, you can see the highlighted portion, the Algeria, as well as Niger and Chad and Egypt. And you can see it is the Mediterranean Sea located here. And mostly Libya is desert. And we can know that in the desert, flood like situation is very much prominent, meaning it is not such prominent. I told you opposite. So why this flood? It was because of the flash flood, and scientists and experts are saying that it is due to the global warming incidents. So we have understood, and we have understood the location of Darna, and you should remember for the UPSC prelims point of view the location of Darna, the location of Libya. That's why I discussed with respect to the geographical aspect. So in fact, there may be more death because of this flash flood, and may peace prevail here. So shifting our focus to editorial discussion, we have to discuss two articles. First article will be related to biofuels. The world over is focusing more and more on biofuels, but there is a concern over it. There is a concern about how we choose the types of biofuel. biofuel has various types like first generation biofuel, second generation biofuel, third and fourth generation biofuel. But if we are more focused on first generation biofuel, then it will challenge our food security. So the article focuses on, you should focus on second generation biofuel, which is basically the byproducts of food and agricultural sector, that will help to prevent food insecurity. So this article deals with that. The second article will be related to the flooding. In fact, there is a solution provided here, that why this flooding occurs, because we have huge encroachment in the floodplains of the river, and that's why when there is a heavy rainfall, the water gets distributed along the floodplains, and any infrastructure which is located along the floodplains will get devastated, whether it is home, whether it is people, whether it is road, railway, anything, that will get devastated, and we will not able to protect all these. So what is the solution? The solution is not lying along the flood protection, but the solution lies along the flood management. And the flood management simply says that whatever you have encroached the floodplains of the river, all encroachments should be removed, and rivers should be placed into the original conditions of the floodplain that was existing, so that any excess rainfall if occurs, that should not disturb the population, that should not disturb the floodplains, that should not disturb the infrastructure. That is the basic points the article try to raise. So we'll discuss, but you have to attempt the UPSC mains question. And the first question, it is related to the biofuels. Examine the potential and associated challenges of biofuels as a sustainable energy resource. And you will get the answer today in this discussion as well. Try to write the answer, try to post into the comment section some of the points, so that you should understand and you should learn many things. Even the peer groups, the members who will see the comment, definitely they will also learn. So the interaction should be collaborative, the interaction should be the more interacting, that should be the focus, and that you should engage in as well to develop your thinking capability. Now you have to attempt the UPSC PYQ prelims question, and the question, it is highlighted into the slide. You can attempt that by pausing the video. So shifting our focus to our editorial discussion, the first article will be related to GS paper 3. So when we talk about biofuel, first of all, you have to understand what do you mean by biofuel, and what is the difference between fossil fuel, what is the difference between the biofuel. When we talk about biofuel, it is also hydrocarbon, means it is made up of hydrogen and carbon, and it is produced from organic material like the plants, the waste of the plants, organic material, just like the fossil fuel gets made. But what is the difference between both these two? The major difference is that biofuels can be produced in short interval of time. It can be produced in a day, it can be produced in a month, it can be produced in a week. But when we talk about fossil fuel, it requires huge millions of years to get formed, and the process is natural. That's why there is a big difference. And also one of the most important differences is fossil fuel creates greenhouse gases and affects the environment. But when we talk about biofuels, it is related to a renewable source of energy. That is the two big difference. And you can see in the video how the biofuel gets produced. You can see here when I am discussing that this is the material, which is basically the agricultural residue or the agriculture product inserted into the biomass plant, and the process is known as biomass pyrolysis, and from here the biofuel generation takes place, and because of that the biofuel production takes place. And you can see from the video, and we can provide the biofuel to the vehicles via the biofuel pumps. which is located into various city. This is the concept, this is the idea. But does biofuel is sustainable? We have to ask this question because there is various issue running over biofuels. We have discussed about biofuel, the basics, and hope you understood and you have the concept clarity. There is a type of biofuel you have to understand before understanding the discussion of the article. Biofuels can be divided into various types: first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation. When we talk about first generation, it means this biofuel gets produced from the food crops that we eat, that we consume. It can be produced from sugarcane, it can be produced from wheat, it can be produced from corn. So this is the point. But you can understand, if you are more focused on first generation biofuel, that means that we are challenging our food security, because if more food production gets diverted to the production of biofuel, then definitely the population which needs more food because of the growing population, that may suffer. That's why first generation biofuel is not sustainable for the longer term, because it challenges the food security, it challenges the groundwater depletion. So there is the another type, that is your second generation biofuel. Second generation biofuel में क्या होता है, we focus on the agricultural byproducts, not on the agriculture and the food grains, but we focuses on the byproduct of the agriculture, like wood, like a straw, like the agricultural residue, like the waste. We all focus on that, so it will not challenge our food security. And also the groundwater depletion will not be very much. The groundwater depletion footprint will be very less in the second generation as compared to the first generation. Therefore, which is the sustainable biofuel? Whether it is first generation or the second generation, yes, you are right, it is the second generation. And when we talk about third generation and fourth generation, it is basically in the experimental stage. Experimental stage yani ki the experiments and research are going on. And when we talk about second generation, it means the production of biofuel via algal biomass as a raw material. And you know algae is basically plants. So there is a research going on, but still majority of the biofuel production is done via either first generation or the second generation. But if it gets experiment success, then definitely the third generation will be a very beneficial for the production of biofuels. So that's the point here. Now, if we talk about renewable source of energy, if we talk about the alternative source of energy for the vehicles, so there is a concept like electric vehicles and biofuels. If you ask a question to you, then you can say whether electric vehicles should be promoted or the biofuels. You should think carefully and then answer. Well, I tell you the answer. It should be the biofuels that should be promoted. Why? Because when we talk about electric vehicles, first of all, there is a need of very huge capital in this. Why capital? Because the charging infrastructure it requires. There will be a complete transformation of vehicles engine. Currently, the vehicles is our internal combustion engine. But if we shift to electric vehicles, the internal combustion engine will be completely replaced. So it is very, very much costly, first of all, and it requires huge infrastructure, means huge transformation. Also, the electric vehicles works on batteries. And battery is what? Lithium. It is minerals. It gets extracted from the ground, and that's why it impacts the environment, it impacts the area where mining is conducting. So this is not a good idea. In this article, I am not saying personally, the article says it. So what is the alternative here? Biofuels. Why biofuels? Because इसमें ना तो आपको चेंज करना पड़ेगा इंटरनल कंबशन इंजन को, माइनर मॉडिफिकेशंस करने की जरूरत है, and also there is a no need to have huge change in the infrastructure. There is a no need to create charging infrastructure. The existing petrol pumps may be replaced with biofuel pumps, and the biofuels get will be delivered to the vehicles. There is no need to change huge engines like we are seeing in the electric vehicles. So this is the point. So focus is on what? Biofuels. But when we talk about biofuels, I have already tell you that biofuel is a blanket term, and you should differentiate between sustainable biofuel and unsustainable biofuel. What do you mean by sustainable biofuel? Sustainable biofuel means if the biofuel is getting produced from second generation, third generation, or the coming generation. But when we talk about unsustainable biofuel, it is the biofuel which gets produced from the first generation biofuel. Why? Because when we talk about sustainability, it means we are catering to our present need as well as we need to cater the needs of the future. But unsustainability means we are currently focusing on the present, not for the future. That is the point. And why first generation is not sustainable, we have to understand all this. First of all, when we talk about India mostly focuses on first generation biofuel. First generation means जो आपका एग्रीकल्चर प्रोडक्ट्स है लाइक शुगर कैन, ठीक है, लाइक एक्सेसिव फूड प्रोडक्शन, तो वहां से हम इस्तेमाल करते हैं बायोफ्यूल प्रोडक्शन के लिए. तो is India is focusing on sustainable biofuels? No. Why? Because you can see that we have a target to achieve 20% ethanol blending in the gasoline or the petrol by 2025. We have the target, but it is mostly based on first generation ethanol, first generation biofuel that will be supplied from sugarcane cultivation and the excessive food grains that we produce. But it poses several challenges related to the feedstock supply chain and the scaling up. What are the challenges if we are focusing on first generation biofuel? First of all, groundwater depletion, because these sugar canes and other water intensive crops are consuming very much water. That will lead groundwater depletion, and if more and more water diverted to these crops, definitely it will challenge our food security, because the other food that we consume also requires water. First of all, this is the scenario. The second is the food security implications of groundwater depletion, we have already discussed, and also certain implications of using surplus food grains for ethanol production. What is the implication of surplus food grains? If we are using surplus food grains today for the biofuel or for the ethanol production, definitely it is not a long-term strategy, and any biofuel strategy should be focused on long-term solution. In fact, let's say global warming incidents are happening, intensive floods and drought like conditions are there, and if there is a huge destruction of the agricultural fields due to the floods, due to the drought, then there will be no excessive supply of food grain. Then that time, from where you will generate the biofuels? That will lead to crisis. That is the basic point highlighted here. So we have talked about groundwater depletion. You can see the image that in the coming time there may be global warming, and there will be a rise in the demand for the water for the production of the crops if there is a rise in temperature. And if there is a rise in temperature, that's why plant needs also more water, otherwise the situation of plant will be like this. And if there is a normal situation, the production will be like this. But in abnormal situation, the crops will get dry and dead. And also, as one of the report by University of Michigan projected that the rates of groundwater depletion could triple by 2040 to 81. Why? Because of the global warming. That's why we have limited resources like groundwater or the arable land. And India, when we talk about it, the production is at extreme level and we are not able to enhance productivity. That's why on the another side, we have the growing population of 1.4 billion. So to feed, there is a need to have a food security, and that will come if we are able to conserve our groundwater, conserve our agricultural field, should not divert to the ethanol or the biofuel production. That is the point. So we have discussed that. And also in the coming time, because of the global warming, the expected yield may be reduced and we have to feed our growing population. So long term strategy will not be sufficient कि हम excessive surplus food को divert करें for the ethanol production, because in the long term there may not be the excessive food production, there may be crisis in the food production. So long term strategy on this surplus food grains regarding ethanol production is not good, not better. That is the point. And when we talk about increasing the cultivation of sugarcane and other water intensive crops for the biofuel production, that means what? You are increasing the greenhouse gas emission from the agricultural field, because sugarcane and other water intensive crops has huge methane emission, which is a blunder of global greenhouse gas. So on the one side, we are focusing on biofuel to reduce greenhouse gas emission, and on the another side, we are increasing the greenhouse gas emission by cultivating water intensive crops for our biofuel production. That is a trap, and that trap will not achieve a net benefit, because one side we are increasing our emission and on the another side we are trying to reduce it by biofuel. That means there is a trap here. So on the one side, India is focusing on ethanol blending policy that deals with surplus sugar production. If there is a surplus sugar production, that should be diverted to the biofuel production. But should be a focus that we should reduce the surplus sugarcane cultivation. Otherwise, it will be a very much impact on groundwater depletion. It will be a very much impact in greenhouse gas emission, that you should note, and that the article is saying about. So what is the solution? We have already talked in the initial discussion. That is, we have to focus on sustainable 2G biofuel, because this sustainable 2G biofuel focuses on what? Byproducts, agriculture residue, waste, इस पर focus करता है rather कि first generation biofuels. And also it has low water and GHG footprint. And the recent alliance, that is your global biofuel alliance, which was initiated by India in the G20 India meeting, that also focuses to develop and strengthen the sustainable biofuels in addition to promoting the ethanol uptake. And also there is a important fact you should note, that according to the International Energy Agency, to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, the target of the globe, there is a need to have sustainable biofuel production that needs to be triple by 2030. And if we are not able to achieve this target of biofuel production, that is your sustainable biofuel production, our goal to achieve net zero emission will not be achieved. That is the point. So we need to focus on 2G rather than 1G. You should not link 2G or 1G with related to the telecom sector. It is basically used for the term for the biofuel production and the way to produce it. So be outside the confusion, remain into the dimension area. Okay. When we say about challenges of the 2G biofuel generation, there is a challenges. The challenges is that, let's say one area produces the byproduct, agriculture byproduct. The second area also produces byproduct. You can understand when we link to the Indian state. Suppose Punjab, it has generated agriculture residue. Suppose the Tamil Nadu, it has also generated agriculture residue. But when we talk about second generation biofuel generation, there should be a need of ethanol plant that will produce it. So the first biggest challenge is that we have to make it decentralized. Otherwise, the byproduct which is getting produced in Punjab will not reach to the different region where the bioproduction plant is there. So that's why we need decentralization, meaning in Punjab there should be a plant of biofuel production, in Tamil Nadu there should be a plant of biofuel production, so that decentralization occurs, not the centralization, because centralization will not help the farmers to deliver their agriculture residue to the desired location where the biofuel production is happening. That is the issue. So we need decentralized production center, and so that the crop residue do not have to be transported to a larger distance to a central manufacturing plant. We have discussed the article. Now, if you understood that article, attempt that questions. We are shifting to the second editorial discussion that will be related to the GS paper 3. You can link with that. So first of all, we are seeing huge devastation of areas due to the floods. Either it is in Himachal, either it is in Uttarakhand, either it is Assam, and many more regions, Maharashtra. In fact, every year we hear about the flood and the disaster it caused. Every year, it is not an exception. Now it has become a reality. You should understand that. So when we talk about flooding, we have initially told you that this is the normal condition when the rivers have a limited capacity and they flow in direction like the diagram shows. This is the normal condition. Suppose during the monsoon season, because of excessive water due to the rainfall comes into the river, then it means the river will have the excessive capacity. They will have to distribute the water along the floodplain, and when this condition happens, then we say it a flood like condition. And why does it infects us is that our various infrastructures, houses, the people live in this zone, which should be prohibited, because whenever the excessive rainfall will occur, definitely this area is going to suffer. And our population lives here, many of the population, whether it is slums, whether it is good houses, most of that lies here as well. And we will have a case study of Patna. Okay, so you can see, and this encroachment leads to the devastation, and that was the same condition when we discussed about the floods in Libya, because city was located along the river, and because of that, when there was excessive rainfall due to the flood burst, that caused devastation and the population and the life that get lost. So that is the point. We have talked about you the flood plains, so that you should understand the article in detail, why the flood comes and why there is huge loss of infrastructure in the people. It is all because we have been crossed in the flood plain region, whether it is infrastructure or anything. Okay, so context, when we talk about humanity is struggling with the shortage of water as well as access. In simple terms, on the one side we faces the drought conditions, on the another side we faces the excessive of water because we have the floods. And when we talk about World Health Organization, you should note here a one point. Whenever you are writing an answer, if you quote like that, as the World Health Organization stated, that means you are adding weightage to your answers. That will definitely help you getting good marks in the paper. That you should note as well, whether it is data, whether it is fact, whether it is the conclusion, whether it is the introduction. You should understand these. So according to the World Health Organization, floods are increasing in frequency and intensity due to the climate change, and climate change is a reality. How we can say? Because of the evidence we have seen in India. In fact, 2022, you can remember about the Pakistan floods which claimed over 1700 lives. In fact, in 2023, we have already talked about the floods in Libya that claimed more than 5,000, and in fact are still counting. Maybe it can go about 10,000 as well, because many more are missing here. As well as when we talk about 2013 floods in Uttarakhand, that was devastating, very much devastating. 2014 floods in Kashmir Valley, 2015 floods in Chennai, 2017 floods in Gujarat, and 2023 in India. नॉर्थ इंडिया में आप देख रहे हैं जितना बुरा हाल है हिमालयन रीजन्स में, and the loss it is causing. Also in Delhi, there was a condition that floods will come because the watermark of Yamuna river even crossed its maximum limit of 208.5 meter mark. Although you should remember these examples to quote in the answer, because that will give you extra edge as compared to your competitors. So you should understand, you should remember that examples. What does it indicate? Indicate that all these disasters point to the severity of the situations and there is a need to urgently tackle it. But how to tackle it? First of all, some more data is that when we talk about flooding situation in India, according to the Geological Survey of India, nearly 12% of the total land area of India is prone to floods. Means we have to focus on this area as well. Okay. And also, the most vulnerability is related to our cities, specifically coastal cities, the Mumbai, the Chennai, along with the Patna, which is located on river Ganga. Not only the coastal cities, but the inland cities which is located along the river. Because when the rainfall will occur, the excessive supply of water into the river will drastically affect the regions along the river channels. So that's why cities are most vulnerable, and also cities contribute most to our economy. Why? Because according to an estimate, Indian cities are projected to contribute to about 75% of the GDP by 2030. That is the importance. But if the cities are not protected, if the cities are vulnerable, that means our economy will get affected. And if the economy gets affected, all that sectors of the economy, including the agriculture sector, the economy, the services sector, manufacturing sector, all these gets affected, because all these are interlinked, interrelated to all these. So try to understand this basic dimension. And also we have a Disaster Management Act 2005 that deals with the disaster. But in this article there is a suggestion that we should have a separate provision, separate act that specifically focuses on flood risk management. But when we talk about disaster management, it is basically multi-dimensional act. Simply, it tackles multi-hazardous risks like earthquake. It can be tackled under this act. Like the floods, like the drought, it can also be tackled under this. But as per the act, disasters cannot be predicted. But when we talk about the flooding, it may be predicted by early warning system, by understanding the rise in the volume of the water into the river, we can predict it. But this act does not recognizes the prediction of any disaster. That is one of the issues with this act. And also, what we have to do, so that we have to protect our infrastructure, we have to protect our lives, livelihood, we have to change in a strategy. Basically, we focuses more on flood protection rather than flood management. Flood protection means what? If this is a river, we are creating barricade. Basically, we are creating huge defense walls so that water should not cross the wall, as well as polders, as well as laying of the dikes. But this is short-term solution, this is not long-term solution. So what we should need the flood management strategy. According to the flood management strategy, we focuses on retention of water and restoration of floodplains. Meaning, in current scenario, the floodplains is like has been shortened. But if you go to older times, like 1000 years or the 500 years before, the floodplains was very much larger. So we have to restore these floodplains to the natural level, so that even if excessive water comes due to the heavy rainfall, that does not cause havoc, that does not cause disaster to the population, to the infrastructure. Meaning we have to restore the floodplain. It also means we have to tackle the encroachment which has occurred due to the population, due to the infrastructure has been established in the floodplain region. Because as we talked about map, you can see if there will be a lot of infrastructure here, definitely there will be a huge loss if there is a flooding. So we have to make it natural. We have to recover our floodplains that has been encroached. That is the basic crux of this article. You should understand. So we have talked about this. We have talked about the strategy change, and you can see the impact. This is the river Ganga, okay, and this is the image of Patna. You can see that all these infrastructure are located in the floodplain region, and in fact, when the flood arrived, you can see the infrastructure that get destroyed, the loss of life, the people in this side, nothing is visible. And in fact, if more and more heavy rainfall may occur due to the global warming, this infrastructure will also be going to be impacted. Where will be the people going? What will they eat? Where they will sleep? All these problems will occur if there is a massive flood in this region. So better we have to restore our floodplains to the original. Rather, we should focus on flood protection. We should focus on flood management and water restoration. That is the point. And you can also see the report, a 2018 report of Competitor and Auditor General of India attributed that encroachments in the floodplains of the rivers of Tamil Nadu that led to the cause of Chennai floods. And that's why this report also said that the Chennai flood was a man-made disaster. Means the disaster was not naturally. It was because we have contributed into that disaster. You can also see the map here. What will happen if excessive rainfall in this river comes? That will destroy all these homes, houses, the loss of cattle, the population, the infrastructure, many more you cannot predict as well. And also, there is a case study of Uttarakhand, and Uttarakhand is more focusing on eco-sensitive floodplains where they are creating intensive infrastructure, houses, tourist destinations, hotels. That's why this is not a good thing. There is a need to restrict the development of infrastructure specifically to the floodplain areas, because if flood comes, that will destroy all these encroachment. Nature does not distinguish between what you are rich or you are poor. Okay. And also there is a huge violation of rules in Uttarakhand, like despite we have the order of the National Green Tribunal in 2015 after the 2013 floods that any construction along the river Ganga, which is approx 200 meter from the banks, should not be prioritized, should not be approved. But despite all these regulations, the encroachment is still going on. And also Uttarakhand River Valley Act 2005, which means to regulate mining and construction, but still rampant mining is there. And in fact, Himalayan is a ecologically sensitive zone. If there is an excessive mining, then there will be a landslide like incident will be common. So what is the issue? Laws are not properly implemented. Despite we have laws, but implementation issue occurs, and no state in India has been able to prevent the encroachment on floodplains. So what is the solution? We need to preserve ecosystem, and we have to reduce the physical exposure to natural hazards like floods, landslides, by focusing on preserving ecosystem, by focusing on preserving wetland, the lakes, and other natural heritage, because they serve as buffers. And we can take a case study that in Germany 1996, after a massive flood occurred, Germany changes its strategy under its Federal Water Act. What this act says, that act talks about we should protect our original retention capacity of the river. How? By reconstructing bodies of water like lakes, wetland. We have to reconstruct so that excessive water can be absorbed, so that the floodplains which was destroyed must be retained to the original condition, so that excessive waters can be restored and maintained. So floodplain restoration and water retention of water bodies should be focused upon. And also there is a right incident of climate change, and we are focusing more on climate change adaptation, but we are more focusing on single sector issue. But we need to focus on cross-sectoral issue of climate change adaptation, because when we talk about climate change, it has variety of dimensions, variety of sectors involved. For example, if parliament making laws on climate change, then definitely they should also make laws on land degradation. They also should make laws on forest restoration, because these occurs simultaneously and we need to protect that. We need to be integrated into a coherent framework of these laws, and achieving that requires strong political will. So friends, we have discussed all these article. Hope you understood in the great detail. अगर आपको आर्टिकल अच्छा लग रहा है, please do like, share, subscribe. Thank you friends, thank you very much for your involvement. Please do share. Thank you friends, we'll meet again with our next lecture series.